Hey there guys, how's it going? So, I'm here with some follow-up thoughts on the aftermath of Sergey Kovalev's knockout victory over Anthony Yarde this past weekend. And a few things I wanted to talk about. I mean, you guys know pretty much how I felt about the fight if you saw my prediction video where I picked Sergey Kovalev to win and I only really gave Yarde a puncher's chance. And yeah, in my post-fight review, I pretty much covered what I thought. I thought it was an excellent performance from Kovalev. I thought Kovalev answered a lot of questions. In the eighth round, he had some problems, but he showed his heart, showed his chin, showed his stamina with a second wind, and he was just a superior fighter. He pretty much, in my personal opinion anyway, he pretty much dominated the fight behind his jab. And yeah, I only gave Anthony Yarde the one round. I thought the eighth round was a good round for him. Actually, Kovalev started the eighth round pretty well, but then towards the end of the round, Anthony Yarde landed some huge headshots, which were very eye-catching and had Sergey Kovalev on the brink of getting dropped. So yeah, that was a big round for him. But every other round of the fight, including the seventh, where Yarde had some success, he was backing Kovalev up. I still thought Kovalev was the one landing the punches. While Yarde was coming forward and moving him back, Kovalev actually showed pretty good counter-punching ability on the outside. And the reason why I wanted to make this video now, because you're probably thinking, why am I making this video after I've already done a post-fight review? Well, what I really wanted to talk about is in the aftermath of the fight, what's been happening is at least I'm generalizing, but the general casual boxing audience, as well as the boxing media, particularly the boxing media here in the UK, rather than credit Sergey Kovalev for his victory and talk about the things he did right and the things he did well, all I've been hearing from BT and all I've been hearing from all the boxing media outlets is how brave and courageous Anthony Yarde is and how he almost won in the eighth round. I mean, BT Sport on Twitter, and some of you guys might have seen my tweet. It actually got quite a few likes and retweets, surprisingly, when I responded to BT Sport and I was like, look, guys, Anthony Yarde lost the fight, get over it. And yeah, a lot of people liked that. And because basically BT Sport kept posting on Twitter, they keep talking about the eighth round. What an amazing eighth round for Anthony Yarde. He won the eighth round, this, that, and the other. He had Sergey Kovalev hurt, and they seem to be ripping the cunt out of it, if you know what I mean. They seem to be milking that eighth round for all it was worth. And instead of talking about the 10 rounds that Sergey Kovalev won, let's just talk about the eighth round that Anthony Yarde won. And it just seems to me that it was wishful thinking going into the fight, because I said to you guys in my post-fight review, I was like, I was shocked, I was astounded by the amount of people on Twitter and on like YouTube comments and whatnot who were seemingly picking Anthony Yarde to beat Kovalev. A lot of people were picking him to knock him out, and I was shocked by that. I was like, Anthony Yarde's resume really consists of journeyman and washed up European level guys like Tony Avalon and Nikolai Shalocka. Nikolai Shalocka was probably the best opponent he'd fought, and yeah, to be fair, he was the first guy to stop him. But Shalocka had been in some really hard fights. He was pretty washed up at that point. He was coming off a draw, which I thought he clearly lost, which was against Robert Stiglitz, who was on the verge of retirement then. So really, Anthony Yarde hadn't fought anybody, and even against some of the guys he had fought, like Tony Avalon, he went 7 rounds with Tony Avalon, the same Tony Avalon who got blasted out in 1 round by Joshua Buatsi and got blown away in 2 rounds by Jurgen Bremer, who was never that durable, even at his prime. Tony Avalon went 7 rounds with Anthony Yarde. So to me, Anthony Yarde was completely untested. He was out of his depth fighting Kovalev. The only concern I had going into the fight was if Kovalev would underestimate him and if Kovalev wouldn't be in shape, because he has shown up to fights out of shape before, namely the first Alvarez fight and even the first Pascal fight. I remember he didn't really take that one too serious either and had a couple of problems. So Kovalev, there was just some uncertainty and unpredictability about him going into the fight, but assuming he was healthy, there should have been no doubt that he was going to beat Anthony Yarde, no doubt at all. I mean, I even expressed my concerns in the video. What you remember the video I made where the fight was first being talked about when the WBO first announced it, and I I said straight up, Anthony Yarde is terrified of Sergey Kovalev, and he won't be, he won't be taking the fight. But then, of course, he then got offered a shitload of money by the Russians. I mean, something like 4 million. So, I mean, it was too good an offer to pass up, and he ended up taking the fight. And to be fair, in the fight, he did show heart, but a lot of fighters show heart. I mean, Kovalev himself showed a tremendous amount of heart, and I don't hear anybody talking about Kovalev's heart. In that eighth round, a lot of fighters would have capitulated with the punches he took, especially since Anthony Yarde is naturally heavy-handed. He's naturally a hard puncher, but Kovalev was able to withstand it. So he showed a chin, he showed stamina, showed heart, showed courage, and he showed the technical ability to weather the storm and get the win. I mean, he got right back to work in the ninth. Yeah, and he dominated the 10th, almost got a stoppage, and as Precise pointed out, shout out to him, and I noticed this too. The round actually ended early, which actually saved it saved Anthony Yarde from getting stopped, and Luis Pabon was a split second away from stopping the fight, and if the fight had been stopped there, that would have saved Yarde from the brutal knockout he suffered in the next round at the hands of Sergey Kovalev's jab. So, yeah, to me, Anthony Yarde, yeah, he acquitted himself well in the sense that he showed heart and tried his best, but his best just wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough, in my opinion, to win more than one round. So I don't see why people are giving him so much credit. People seem to be really dick riding him hard. I don't like the way he behaved in the build-up. I thought he was really disrespectful towards Kovalev, and the way that him and his idiot trainer were trying to, trying to play their cards right, and trying to act like the A side and shit, and hoping to get home advantage. But of course, Frank Warren wasn't going to be challenging these Russians in a purse bid, was he? So that was never going to happen. And yeah, I just think that people are going over the top with credit that they're giving to Anthony Yarde. As for Kovalev, he deserves a shit ton of credit, okay? Fought an undefeated young contender and got the win by knockout and survived a scare. So, yeah, for me, it's all about Kovalev and the credit we should be giving him. Now, going forward here, they're talking about a Canelo Alvarez fight, and a few of my subscribers have asked me to talk about that. I'm going to do a separate video on that, but I don't really, I'm not looking forward to it because, with Canelo Alvarez has that same aura around him that Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward and guys like that have, where he doesn't need to do anything to win a fight. Like Canelo Alvarez has the establishment rigged in his favor to the point where he can just show up, just survive for 12 rounds and he wins. That's the setup they have over there. And again, I did a video where I was talking about stop supporting fake fighters. You remember that video? Check it out if you want to. But to me, Canelo Alvarez falls under that same category as a fake fighter, a guy who, narratives are created about his fights to suit him, however the fight goes, whether he gets outboxed, whether he gets outlanded, whether he is the aggressor or whether he's not the aggressor, and whether he does enough to win a fight or not, a narrative gets created that he won the fight one way or another, by hook or by crook. So, I'm not confident about Sergey Kovalev going into that fight. I don't think there's anything he can really do to upset those odds and beat Canelo. I just think it's set in stone that when you fight somebody like Canelo, you could dominate him for 12 rounds. You could drop him multiple times. It doesn't matter. After the fight, the fans and the commentators will say, "Oh well, Canelo's face, did a lot of damage to Kovalev's hands, so Canelo won the fight." In my opinion, that's what it's like. Basically, it's like when Kovalev fought Ward, and when Kovalev dominated and embarrassed Andre Ward, and handily and comfortably beat him. After the fight, it was, oh, well, Ward got up from the knockdown, so he deserves extra points for that. And Ward was, landing some power hugs on the inside and landed some body shots in the clinch, so that negates everything, and that gives him the decision. That's literally how fights are scored over there in America. I'm not even kidding. So, I mean, he's gonna fight Canelo in Vegas, and it doesn't matter what transpires in the ring. Canelo will still come out with the victory no matter what. Canelo will be given the victory no matter how he performs in the ring. So I'm not interested in that fight, really, man. Not interested, but I will do a video about it, talking about what it could look like to the eye. Obviously we know the official outcome will be win for Canelo, but what will transpire in the ring and how will Kovalev approach that fight is quite intriguing to me. So I will talk about it for you guys. But yeah, moving on from that, Anthony Yarde. Well, I think it's very simple. Anthony Yarde needs to do what he wasn't willing to do before in order to get a bit more respect from me and from most hardcore fans, and he needs to stop thinking himself above the domestic scene. When there's talks about him fighting the likes of Callum Johnson or Joshua Buatsi or Hosea Burton or guys like that, even Callum Smith who might be moving up. He needs to stop saying that he's above all of these guys and that he's world class and they're not. Take on Joshua Buatsi next. Right? There's no reason not to take on that fight. There's a bit of beef there. There's a bit of drama that'll sell in the UK. Take on him, or take on Callum Johnson or Hosea Burton or Frank Buglioni. Any of those guys. Okay, any of those domestic level British light heavyweights. Okay, there's no reason not to fight some or all of those guys. So yeah, that's what Anthony Yarde needs to do. I mean, his manager and trainer had him fighting just the easiest level of opposition they could legally fight. They were taking what I like to call the Deontay Wilder, um, the Deontay Wilder career building, record padding shit, where you fight guys who literally should not even be licensed to fight you. Those were the guys who Anthony Yarde were fighting. The Deontay Wilder route to a world title, just fight a bunch of bums until you become mandatory and then get your title shot. And didn't work out for him, did it? Because that lack of experience cost him against Sergey Kovalev. And yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about is the absolute insanity that I've been hearing from some channels. Now, you guys will know, if you followed me at all, that there are certain bigger channels out there who I just cannot for the life of me stand now. A lot of people have been talking about Hatman and his insane reaction to the Kovalev Yarde fight, where he's talking about Anthony Yarde winning 4 rounds, and he was winning the fight until he was getting tired, and Kovalev looked like shit, and it was a shit performance from Kovalev. And yeah, Yarde was so skilled and so amazing. It was just the little bit of lack of experience is the only reason he lost, and all that bollocks. Um, this is the same guy. Let me tell you where this guy's coming from, because I know a lot of people are responding to him, and a lot of people are being ultra respectful and saying, I know you know your thing, but you're just a little bit off on this. No, let me tell you what his agenda is, okay? That guy also said that Triple G got schooled by Danny Jacobs. Right, go and watch his post-fight review if you don't believe me. Hatman claimed that Danny Jacobs schooled Gennady Golovkin. Hatman also claimed that Andre Ward handily and comfortably beat Sergey Kovalev in the first fight. That's the type of individual that I'm talking about. Okay, that guy right there. Okay, so that's the type of individual I'm talking about, and I guess you can probably understand why he has those opinions if you know his background. Okay, he's from an area of London where it's like you go to that area, it's like Spot the White Man. I mean, they're very pro-black, black supremacist type of background, type of area that he's from, and he takes that into his whole boxing philosophy too. I mean, I know the guy pretends to be non-biased and he pretends to be objective and all that bullshit. No fighter is below, criticism, and no fighter is below praise. All that bullshit he comes out with. Trust me, that guy's a hateful, deceitful individual. When it comes to predicting fights, I find the comments on some of his videos hilarious when it comes to some of his predictions, because he'll make a prediction where basically he'll pick the favorite. He'll say, "Oh yeah, he should win. He's a better fighter. He should win." But then at some point in the video, he'll put a disclaimer where he'll say, "But an upset wouldn't surprise me. Yo, you get me, man? An upset wouldn't surprise me." And then after the fight, it will see, I told you, an upset wouldn't surprise me. Or he'll say, yeah, it was comfortable victory, I was right. Basically, whatever the outcome of the fight, he'll claim he was right because he put that disclaimer there. He'll never flat out predict somebody to win, you know. That's what he's like, man. He's very slick that way, and a lot of his subscribers don't really see it. You know, when I make my predictions, I'm very transparent with who I pick. Like, sometimes I don't know. I'll tell you straight up, it's 50-50. I don't know. Other times I'll be very confident on somebody winning, and you know, sometimes I'll get it wrong, sometimes I'll get it right. But what I won't do is then act as if I was right afterwards. You know, when I get it wrong, that's not something I'll do. Um, you know, it's good to be transparent on this platform and not be biased, but so many people are, and so many people have racial bias. And I think with Anthony Yarde, especially with Kovalev's history of being labeled a racist and a villain and all that shit by the American media, you know, when he was going into the Andre Ward fight, they were calling him a racist because of the whole Adonis Stevenson situation, just to gain sympathy for when Andre Ward gets the decision, you know, when they rob Kovalev, and it worked. To be fair, it worked. People were like, I saw comments all over the place. So Kovalev won the fight, but he a racist, so I don't care. You know, I actually seen comments like that. So, you know, Sergey Kovalev, it's much more difficult for somebody like him to get credit for what he does in the ring than it is for somebody like Anthony Yarde, you know, because Anthony Yarde is a privileged, undefeated, you know, Western fighter who has had everything handed to him. I mean, he even got elevated to mandatory challenger without actually having to fight anybody to become mandatory challenger. So it was ridiculous, you know. It was Frank Warren's affiliation with the WBO. And as for him going over to Russia, people are constantly talking about, oh, he went over to Russia. That's so amazing. But Precise actually covered that too. You know, he said in his video he was talking about how, and I've said this many times in the past, how guys like Usyk and Golovkin, Lomachenko, Kovalev himself, you know, even the Klitschko's, like so many Eastern European fighters were constantly fighting overseas, and yet they never get any credit for it. Like Kovalev has fought in so many of his opponents' hometowns. He fought Jean Pascal in his hometown twice. I mean, he fought Ward in America, fought you know, so many fighters that he fought, Hopkins, you know, he fought them all in their backyard. He actually won his world title in the UK against Nathan Cleverly in Wales, and Nathan Cleverly was starting to get really popular in Wales. So he had a lot of support there. That fight was on a Frank Warren card. It was on Box Nation. You know, it was set up for Nathan Cleverly to win. It had British officials, I believe, a British referee, and Kovalev went over there and stopped him early and won the title. So Sergey Kovalev was in the position that Anthony Yarde was in this past weekend when he fought Nathan Cleverly, and he came out on top. Didn't get a whole lot of credit for it though, did he? So you know, nobody was really crediting him for fighting overseas. So yeah, Kovalev is always being who he is, being that he's from Russia and that he doesn't speak great English. You know, he's a great fighter and he's got great heart, but he's never going to be credited for that because of who he is and where he's from. Let's be real. I mean, he's white. He's from Russia. He's a very you know, conservative, non-PC type of individual. So, you know, he's not afraid to offend people. So that's going to turn a lot of people off, and he's never going to get the credit for who he is, even when he retires, you know. And it seems as if they're going to stick him in with Canelo. And again, you think they're going to let a Russian win a decision over Canelo? That ain't happening, man. And Canelo is one of these. Again, he's one of these guys. He doesn't need to do anything to win a fight, man. He just needs to get through it and survive, which he probably can do. Canelo's very good at surviving. So yeah, it is what it is, man. I don't really know what else to say, but that's pretty much all I've got to say about the aftermath of this Kovalev fight. Massive credit to Sergey Kovalev for the victory. It was a great career-defining victory, in my opinion, against a young, undefeated guy who was inexperienced but had a lot of had a lot of ambition and came to win. So yeah, credit to Yarde too for that, for actually making it a good fight. But Kovalev deserves the credit, man. It was his night. And that's all I've really got to say. I've got a few videos to make that I've got in mind. I just really need to figure out how to find the time and how to articulate them. But yeah, that's all I've got to say. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and God bless.